rolling dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you need the wrong or right. You never know if you don't.
It's been a long time.
What's going on
there to here?
Let's hop right into it.
Okay.
This is Dungeon Master of None. Hello, everybody. I'm Rob.
I'm Matt.
Over there is Matt. Yeah. Hello. What's going on, Matt?
Well,
what's happening? What's the haps this week?
It's been an exciting week in the wide world of role playing games. We got a little bit of news roundup to cover, so let's dive right in. I think
quite a few things have happened. If you're in the know, you'll undoubtedly not be surprised, or you might be surprised. I guess we'll find out. Matt, surprise me.
Well, I think the most exciting news of the week is there is a distribution deal announced at the end of April for a new Vampire the Masquerade, a new edition of World of Darkness. Your favorite angsty vampires are back.
That's right. We're about to give birth to a whole new generation of angsty teens and goth girlfriends and everything that you've ever wanted for LARPing with your weird pale friends in a convention center on the weekend.
Hey, and I mean, it's like the Vampire the Masquerade game sort of predates in a lot of weird ways the obsession of America with vampires, which I feel like we're on the tail end of. Do you agree with that?
Oh, strong agree. No, Vampire the Masquerade survived through the dark times when vampires were not sexy or cool, or when they were kind of cheesy and sexy and cool. It's definitely from the Anne Rice era, or even before the Anne Rice era, of when there were sexy vampires, but they were not mainstream sexy vampires.
Yeah, but not maybe Victorian that far back, but definitely the 90s when Vampire the Masquerade was the number 2 RPG for a good while, and it's kind of it fallen by the wayside. Going to my recent local gaming convention, there was not a single World of Darkness game. And if you're just playing D&D and have never heard of this before, the publisher of Vampire the Masquerade, White Wolf, they made all kinds of vampire and other noir urban fantasy.
Right, there's Hunter and Changeling and Mage.
My favorite, Mage the Ascension, for sure.
Mage the Ascension. Yeah, so we mock because it's a werewolf, of course. We mock, but it all role-playing games and many video games and just games in general owe a great debt to White Wolf and to Vampire the Masquerade especially. It really established a lot of the tropes of the convention and has had a huge influence on a lot of role-playing games and popular fiction. Chuck Wendig of Twitter fame and also writer of many fun novels got his start, I think, or one of his first gigs writing for Hunter, for White Wolf, and a lot of other fantasy authors have started there. So it's a cultural touchstone. It's a little bit like, how, what's that thing they say about Velvet Underground? Nobody heard it, but everybody who heard it went and started their own band. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Namely, Macaulay Culkin, right? And we have the Pizza Underground because of that. That's the main spin-off I can think of Velvet Underground. I don't know if there's probably other bands that were influenced by it too, but the Pizza Underground, main one.
Right. So anyway, this is exciting because it's been, Matt, it's been like a decade or more since we've had a new edition of Vampire the Masquerade. Longer.
There's been there's been a bunch of editions and a lot of. So unlike Dungeons and Dragons, say, or probably even Pathfinder, Vampire the Masquerade and other World of Darkness properties, when they release a new one, they tend to not only release new rules, but update and move the timeline forward. I'm sure there will be more of that.
Yeah, the lore is unlike, as we have discussed in Dungeons and Dragons, is really, really key
baked
to not
in.
Just.
It's in the very veins of the game, you might say.
You might say. It's not something you can take or choose or really like do a lot of playing around with. There's very, very well established factions and clans, and
you can't just like take Vampire the Masquerade and be like, let's just do a Sookie Stackhouse novel vampire game. It's not going to work.
Exactly. There are other properties that you can do that with, but most World of Darkness games are really, really rich with lore. Good, strong, well-written lore, but you really have to lean into that, which is good because it works for most people, and it's got like a very distinctive theme and play style, and it absolutely works. So this is exciting news. It's supposed to come out at the end of the month or sooner or later.
Yep.
What's the timeline?
I think it's just been announced. I don't think they have announced a date.
I'm mixing this up with a different release. Sorry. Yep. But
we will review it whenever it comes out, assuming that it actually does, for sure. My personal hope is that White Wolf publishes a rule and setting book that one can actually read and understand. In my opinion, their rule books are like so interspersed with like weird short stories and things that it's impossible to look things up or understand the game with ease. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, strongly agree. They're very well written. Well, a little overwritten in my opinion, but
it's the editing, it's the layout. It bugs me.
They're rich with lore, but it's very hard to use them as a rule book as you might a D&D player's handbook. I'm very excited to see what a post RPG resurgence White Wolf looks like. I'm curious to see if they've made changes or if they're it's going to look like just an updated version of the older books or anything like that. But I think this is very exciting. This is one of those classics. This is like Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, one of your core old school role-playing games, Shadowrun, that has been around forever. Not anywhere near as popular as D&D, but still very popular, still with a very large and devoted and creative, interesting following. So this is cool and interesting and good news. I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Thing that makes me interested mostly is that it makes me wonder, are we, where we can chart role-playing games like one does releases of video game consoles or something? Is this the newest wave that was kicked off with 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and now that so many people are playing, everyone's getting back in to release their new updated rules?
You mean, is there going to be a new cycle where D&D announces a new edition and then Shadowrun announces a new edition?
I mean, I don't think D&D is going to announce a new edition anytime soon. I think it's like the D&D renaissance has kicked off a wave of everyone else is like, well, if we could just publish a new sexy edition, we could just get a little spillover.
I do think that's true, and I'm interested to see if any other properties do the same thing. I mean, Shadowrun recently did Anarchy. I don't know if that was a response to 5th edition or not. Yeah, and then there's this from White Wolf.
So and Pathfinder 2nd edition. So everyone's back in.
Pathfinder 2nd edition is the obvious one. So yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I'm not complaining. I do think that mostly for the I'm gonna bring fire down on us, but I think for the most part, relatively frequent refreshing of games is good for the hobby. Obviously, there are edition wars, and editions need to be planned out and executed very intelligently and carefully. But I think for the most part, revisiting the rules frequently is a good thing, more often than it is a bad thing.
Well, so we'll look forward to reviewing for you Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition when it comes back, and its companion rulebook, Werewolves, not Swearwolves.
All right, what else is in the news, Matt?
So I think my other main thing in the news is we've actually, we did an episode on this a while back, if you want to give it a listen, about Pathfinder 2nd edition, and we've gotten a lot more news and information about Pathfinder 2nd edition. It's possible to sort of see a little bit what the rules system looks like. So I thought we'd chat a little bit about that.
What's most interesting of these new announcements, Matt?
Well, so we've seen a couple of things. We've seen previews of the cleric and alchemist class. It seems like what Pathfinder is doing with their second edition is, and this seems like a good thing. I mean, the devil's in the details, or the Asmodeus is in the feats, so to speak. They've moved most of the way the game works from class features and stuff like that to feats, sort of just like, traits or perks. Lots of role-playing games have this. They're optional rule in 5th edition, but it looks like your feat selection will determine what type of character you can play and how that's going to go down in Pathfinder. And so lots of classes give bonus feats and new options for your feats, but you can sort of take those feats maybe at a slower rate or less powerful versions, no matter what your character is. So they're doubling down on the sort of modularity and creativity of Pathfinder, which I think is a good thing.
I think this is a good idea, because one of the things that Pathfinder was very good at was it had distinguished itself by giving from 3.5 by giving more feats and making them more interesting and powerful. And so I think it's a good idea to lean into this, especially since so many of the feats that had been designed for Pathfinder were very rich and interesting and allowed for very distinct playstyles, especially things like the style feats or some of the meta magic or class specific feats. So really leaning into that, I think, is one thing that will make Pathfinder very interesting and play well to the strengths of the system, to the strengths of what Pathfinder did as opposed to 5th edition. I think this is a good direction for them to go. Again, like you said, the devil's in the details. It depends on how they do it, because there were also a lot of really annoying feat chains, some of which were left over from 3.5, but some of which were instituted for almost entirely no reason. So as long as they try to do away with those or make those less onerous to take, that will be good.
It seems like, but this is the approach they're taking with everything. Like weapons seem to be getting this kind of modular approach where they have kind of traits, and maybe you have some feats that can give your weapon a trait no matter what innate traits it has. So it seems like modular everything, and I think, as you said, this fine line between making the rules way too complicated, making your choices meaningless, and making them fun enough but not too onerous. So it's definitely, I mean, none of the things I've seen so far have said Pathfinder is going to be that system where you can show up with your friends, explain what a role-playing game is to them in 5 minutes, and get started. I don't think none of the things I've seen in this playtest or preview of the playtest so far tell me that's going to be the case.
And I don't think that it ever should be. You'll never compete with 5th edition or with something like Dungeon World for that, right? If you want something simple to explain to your friends, Pathfinder will never be that. But there is enough of a population of players and gamers that want something a little bit crunchier, and meeting them halfway, I think, making it so that you still have that granularity and modularity and the ability to create unique and interesting characters with, highly specialized and interesting skill sets is something that is valuable. And if they can make that just a little bit more accessible, a little bit less Mathfinder, then I think that would be a great direction for second.
And of course, I'm very happy because alchemists are no longer spellcasters; they science shit.
Ooh, a good choice. They were in a weird halfway place in Pathfinder, or they are in a weird halfway place in Pathfinder, which is okay. It bothers Matt a lot more than it bothers me, but it definitely created some mechanical and flavor weirdness that just doesn't exist in other classes. So I think this is definitely a good step towards something a little bit more well defined, and that's important because the Alchemist was one of Pathfinder's iconic classes, not literally the iconics, but one of the things that Paizo had done a particularly good job of. The Alchemist, the Oracle, the Gunslinger. I always felt like their the classes that they had designed themselves, specifically Pathfinder, were much stronger and more interesting than the ones they adapted.
For sure. Speaking of adapting classes, if you're someone who occasionally keeps up with the Unearthed Arcana material from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and basically where a lot of it is produced by head designer Mike Merles, he floated some ideas for a psionic mage that basically, can you adapt psionics just using the regular spellcasting? And, his conclusion was basically you can, but that's not the route we're going to go down. So at least my prediction or hope for that psionic class is no good. But there's a version of it. Mike Merles made it, so it's there.
Well, that reminds me of one of the other things I wanted to talk about is Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which we've learned a little bit more about, and it definitely seems like either the precursor to or a big part of a planescape or spelljammery-ish type setting. There are Githyanki and Githzerai. There are half giants and all these psionic and planeswalking races, and that's just what we've seen from previews. I think we also saw an astral juggernaut and maybe some inevitables or inevitable art. So we're definitely looking at a manual of the planes type thing, and definitely some psionic.
Right. Not only are we getting Gith and Githziri, or Githyanki and Githzerai, we're also getting them as playable character races.
Oh, right. That was the critical thing, is that I haven't seen all of it. I don't know if these are official stats just yet, but things like getting innate psionic abilities and affinity with psionic classes. I don't know if Mordenkainen's is going to include. Almost certainly not going to.
No. It will almost certainly not. But there will be many new playable races. So it's going to be kind of like Volos, with playable races, but also monsters for the DM, including more tieflings, because everyone loves tieflings. Drugar, Eladrin.
Everyone needs a tiefling subclass, yeah. Or
for sure.
Sub-race.
You need a million tiefling sub-races for some.
One of my players, my campaign is wrapping for the summer, or it's taking a break, and we're going to play a short dungeon crawly type thing by another DM, and one of my players is extremely excited about the Minotaur class and is Minotaur race, and is eagerly awaiting the release of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes so that he can make a Minotaur. We will see how it turns out, but there was an Unearthed Arcana about the Minotaur, so...
I've never had the urge to roleplay a Minotaur, but for someone who does, I'm, more power to them.
He really likes monstrous races. He's currently playing a kobold. This is his thing. This is what inspires him to play Dungeons and Dragons, is making an interesting character out of a monstrous race, and he does a good job.
All right. Any other news of the week that we should chat about?
I don't think so. There's always something. And by the way, if there's something that happens during the week and we missed it, absolutely email us or send it to us, DM us on Twitter, let us know, and we will happily discuss it. But I think those are the big things. There's going to be more releases for Mordenkainen's.
And we, of course, will be buying early copies from our friendly local gaming stores, so we can give you a review and preview
day one review.
We'll load up a YouTube
Pretty
unboxing
quick.
video where our hands sort of shakily paw at the pages as we come through it. YouTube is filled with videos like that.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
It is.
What's with
people
these
love
damn kids and their
unboxing.
unboxing? I don't understand.
Their unboxing. Yeah, people love an unboxing. People love to see other people get stuff.
$26 in my hand. Up to Lexington, 125. Feel sick and dirty, more dead than alive. I'm waiting for
Okay, this is
You
the
wanna
main
get to
event.
the main event,
So
Matt?
today, we're going to talk to you about something that's not Dungeons and Dragons, people. People want it. People have been asking you to do it. So if you like playing Dungeons and Dragons and you like role-playing games, we are saying play this other thing.
We're going to talk about a few things, but specifically we're talking about other game systems is what we're going to talk about. And this is just like the broadest strokes. I think we would like to get into more detail about all of these, but we wanted to sort of touch briefly on some of the other game systems that we're familiar with and what's good about them and what's bad about them, and then maybe what you can draw from them when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, or vice versa. We did a little bit of this with Michelle last week when we talked about Powered by the Apocalypse, which is what at least inspired me to start thinking about it. But what's cool about, none of these are as successful or as popular as D&D for various reasons, but there's a whole rich world of other game systems, some of which do things far better than D&D. And it's a shame that they don't have a broader audience, because a lot of players are trying to play campaigns that would fit better in Savage Worlds or Shadowrun or Call of Cthulhu or Dogs in the Vineyard in D&D, and that's a missed opportunity.
So if that's you, if you have ideas that cannot be contained by the truly, when you step back, tiny box that is that red box of D&D, and want to play a campaign or an adventure that goes beyond or does other things, we're going to give you some suggestions and, like Robert said, brief overviews of some other games that you might be interested in.
Why don't we start with one that I'm pretty familiar with, which
all right,
is
sell me on Shadowrun in 30 seconds.
Well, so the pitch of Shadowrun is that it's a near future alternate-ish reality Earth. At this point, the timelines have converged with magic and cyberpunk and fantasy races living in a dystopian future America run by mega corporations. But the real selling point is that it's a heist game. It's the whole thing is built around mostly one session heists or jobs that you get from a Johnson, and you have to talk to your contact about, and you have to plan and execute.
Guard.
Damn it, the fixture said there weren't any guards.
I'll take him out.
No, it's too noisy. Sal, can you drop him?
Him? No problem.
Oh, who goes there? Just what are you doing? She did it, come on.
And, unlike your Dungeons and Dragons, where you're going to go on a rolling adventure and you may have, an extended narrative, there's usually like a meta narrative in Shadowrun, but each session should be self-contained. You get a job, you do the job, you try not to get betrayed, you get paid. And that's
Robert
the real selling point of Shadowrun.
cuts through the ice. That's a Shadowrun term. To the juicy source code of what makes Shadowrun cool and fun, and obviously cyberpunk and street samurais and weird Canadian elf sorcerers and things like that.
Canadian elves and Native American
That's right.
elf communities.
These are all part of Shadowrun, but what makes it great is that, like Robert said, is it really makes for a fun, high tech, high magic, high stakes heist game where the fun is with discussing with your player characters, planning out a scenario, trying to execute it, dealing with the unexpected, and hopefully getting paid or getting out alive at the end of the day.
Right, and there's so much to talk about with Shadowrun, and a lot of people play it for entirely different reasons. The lore is actually very interesting and very rich, and in a lot of ways entirely unique. As we have talked about, the brilliant and underappreciated masterpiece Bright is a little bit like a Shadowrun world without the cyberpunk
or any
elements.
of the world building that just makes a little bit of sense.
Right, or anything that really makes any sense. But sort of aesthetically, it's a little bit like Shadowrun. But the world is so interesting and rich, and this game has been around since the 80s, or definitely the 90s, maybe late 80s. So there's decades of books and lore, and like World of Darkness, every time they release a new edition, they bump the timeline a little bit. And so there's like a whole bunch of stuff that has happened. The internet is called the Matrix, and so the Matrix has undergone like a bunch of different changes because insane AIs have destroyed the whole thing. So there's lots of reasons
telling
to
me
play it,
it's juicy,
but
it's telling me it's savory, and if this is the Matrix, I don't want to go back to the Dungeons and Dragons real world. What are the favorite things about Shadowrun lore, at least for me personally, and it doesn't apply to anyone else, is I have a friend who's insane and incredible, and he basically became a master of Shadowrun in the 80s when he got like the first edition copy and then shipped out on a submarine for like 2 years. And there's nothing to do with a submarine. So he became a master of running Shadowrun games. And I think he still consults for Catalyst for their lore. So anytime I have a lore question or something that doesn't make sense, I just ask my friend next time I see him, and he explains the whole thing to it. But it is a very complicated lore, but it's super cool because you have elves and humans and dwarfs and sort of more ugly races like trolls and orcs living alongside each other. And there's a reawakening. The Mayan apocalypse has basically come true and brought a new age to the world, which has brought back magic. At the same time, technology is advancing where we're all becoming cyborgs and corporations control everything.
Definitely like lends itself to a certain type of game, but there's just so many stories that you can tell. And because a Shadowrun campaign is so relatively small, like it usually takes place in one city and can sometimes take place, dozens and dozens of sessions in one part of one city, many of which are very well described and detailed by the Shadowrun source books or novels or whatever. There's just an infinite possibility of exciting, gangster stories and heist stories and, clan war and any sort of like fun, cyberpunk, dystopia, sci-fi, urban fantasy story that you want to tell. Shadowrun.
Right. I mean, you mentioned Bright earlier. Like, if Bright was a Shadowrun story, it would actually be really cool because the people trying to get the MacGuffin or thing you're trying to heist would be interesting villains, and players would have to make some very hard choices about how to get out of some sort of Bright-like situation with their lives instead of mindlessly stumbling around.
Oh yeah, the core of Bright is like a perfect Shadowrun session. You find the thing, and then everything goes south, and you have to figure out how to extract yourself from gang territory. That's a classic Shadowrun scenario. You get betrayed all the time.
So this is one of my favorite things about Shadowrun, and one of the questions you should ask yourself when you're looking for a new role-playing system to play is, what does it allow you to do differently as a dungeon master? And when I look at Shadowrun, like, I hear about like Dungeons and Dragons, DMs being like, well, I really want to betray my players and dick them over, but I'm worried they're going to respond badly. In a game like Shadowrun, that is more than okay, like all of the time. You don't even have to have a good reason for it, right? Like, if you want to play a game where you betray your players,
it's assumed,
this is for you.
That's what's unique about Shadowrun is that the things that, again, you can do these things in D&D, but the planning, right?
Right, that's the second thing. If you want to like have a game where players sit around and plan, if they love that about your Dungeons and Dragons, they would love Shadowrun.
Yeah, if you find that your players are, you present them with a dungeon and they spend an hour planning their approach, you may want to give them a chance at Shadowrun. And it's not just about it's baked into the lore. It's baked into the mechanics of the game. All the characters have things, all of the classes, all of the races, all of the nuts and bolts have things that relate to how you approach the actual job. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't really model that particularly well, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in your character's background and in their character creation that relate to how they deal with their contacts and how they potentially deal with Johnson, who they know, what their skills are, and it does this so much more interestingly than Dungeons and Dragons does. I haven't talked a whole lot about the mechanics, and I don't think that I will very much, because I do want to touch on this a little bit, is that Shadowrun is very, very crunchy. It is extremely crunchy, and it can be very, very fiddly. I as a GM for this game was much more stressed out than I ever was running a D&D game. And it was fun and I loved it, but it requires really extreme knowledge, and a lot of stuff is basically not spelled out or very poorly spelled out.
In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, it's really hard to make a character that's bad. You can certainly make worse choices, and you can make a character, and then in the play of the game you can make choices that mean that you're ineffective at accomplishing whatever role-playing goals you have. But in Shadowrun, like, you can easily just make a character that is bad at everything and totally worthless.
Right. And even if you make a good character, there are some things that you may not even be able to figure out how to do, like a lot of the things related to rigging and drones and just matrix behavior, hacking stuff. It's in the books technically, but it can be very, very difficult to find out what skill pool you use for certain things.
The good upside of the mechanic and crunchy bits for Shadowrun is the core mechanic, like, basically how you resolve an action or things like that is very clear. For success and
it's unbelievably easy. Elegant. You just roll a bunch of d6s.
Then
the problem comes when you try to find out what sixes to roll. But the core function is you have a dice pool based on a couple of your stats, and you roll that either in just isolation or in competition with someone else to see how well you do.
The core of the game is like a classic clean lines Triumph motorcycle, or beautifully restored from the 80s, then with a couple red flyer wagons bolted onto the side, and then a bunch of cans dragging in the back, and a sign saying just married, falling out. It's got some bogeys. So the mechanics are something to be aware of. The book is, at least the most recent edition, 5th edition, is not well edited. Some things you can sit there and read for an hour.
It is extremely poorly edited. I'm sorry, Catalyst. It is one of the most mind-bogglingly complicated and poorly designed.
How can something not exceed 6 but be less than 3? It's just like you read things like that over and over again. You can't figure out what's going on, and that's a little sad.
Try to figure out what skill as a rigger that is hot linked to a drone uses to pilot that drone, and get back to me. There's an answer, but just see how long it takes you to figure that out.
That's your homework for the week, listeners. Is figure out the rigger class.
So anyway, obviously I'm a big fan of this system. It's got a rich lore. What's so cool about it is that the game plays so fundamentally different from D&D.
This is why we're telling you to try things.
Sometimes you crave that. And that can be very fun. And if you love D&D and you get everything you want out of D&D, you don't need it. But it can be so cool because just the way the game is structured, you'll end up playing an entirely different game, which I think is definitely to Shadowrun's credit as a game system. It's very well designed with one thing in mind, or a few things in mind, but specifically with, this is a heist game, this is a job game, this is a job-based game.
I've had an amazing session of Shadowrun where we spent 2 hours planning a job to steal some code, and then the actual resolution of that, took 20 minutes of time at the table, but in real time it took like 15 seconds, right, in our imaginary round time. And it's beautiful. It's like, all these things happen at once. 10 guards get shot in the back of the head with silenced guns, and software gets uploaded, software gets erased, mines get erased, and it was amazing, right?
You also get You get a lot of like
8,
very
Ocean's
cool,
10
like cinematic
things.
Like you get a lot of like moments to shine that you may get in D&D, but entirely differently. Like your hacker just like gets to do the I'm in voice, and your operator guy gets to strangle a guard and, everybody does everything perfectly and it goes off and you feel very, very
Or if you're
cool.
Gustav, my last combat mage, who didn't realize that invisibility didn't block infrasight on a helicopter nearby, you just get shot with like a Gauss rifle and you're dead. But you live and learn.
It is also a very
you don't.
It's a high lethality, like very high lethality game. So the stakes are very high, and I keep saying it plays differently than D&D, and you really ought to just give it a shot. There's tons of one shot modules out there.
That's perfect for a one shot,
and that's the thing. Like there's never like an easier game to create a single.
And if you're new to it and the mechanics scare you, and they should, it's a healthy fear. The quick start stuff is not too bad. Even I have run a quick start.
The quick start stuff makes it easy for you.
Once.
Yeah.
Come on!
Well, Matt, I've blabbed on about Shadowrun for quite a while. I love it. Do you have another game system you want to talk about?
I think we should talk about the 500 ton elder god in the room. That is Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, we really do have to reference Call of Cthulhu. I agree. So you've run this before. I've played in it. I have never run a Call of Cthulhu campaign. So why don't you lead this one?
I'm going to be honest with you here. I have not run a Call of Cthulhu campaign either. I don't think I've ever played in an adventure that's taken longer than 3 sessions to do. Not that Call of Cthulhu doesn't lend itself to longer adventures, because it certainly can. But what Call of Cthulhu is.
I mean, you'll go mad if it lasts too long. You definitely need to self-contained, 2 or 3 session adventures for sure.
Call of Cthulhu is a sort of horror game, and not horror in the like teen slasher flick or The Quiet Place. It's horror in the sort of, oh God, there are things beyond mortal comprehension lying just beneath the surface of what we believe is a civilized world, and it lends itself really well to sort of a turn of the century Victorian or maybe 1920s or 1930s setting, but you can easily play it in the present day, and I in fact usually do. It's based on the mythos of one H.P. Lovecraft, noted super weirdo and weird tales short story writer. So it's a horror game where you investigate the mysteries of the cosmos and you uncover weird monsters that drive you insane and mess with your mind.
When we talk, again, one of the things that makes this worth mentioning is, again, like Shadowrun, a Call of Cthulhu campaign plays just radically differently than your average Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and there can be a little bit of overlap. There are a lot of actually pretty good rules.
Sanity,
for sanity and things like that in D&D, but it's not modeled quite as well as in the Call of Cthulhu rules. But you're expected to lose or win poorly and suffer long-term consequences, and the things that you face are substantially, they're harder to fight in that you're just not going to like run up and shoot or punch or stab something with anywhere near as much satisfying success as you will in D&D.
And back to that sort of my big overarching question why I'm asking why do I want to play this system is, what does it allow me as the dungeon master or my players to do that maybe another system or setting doesn't? And Call of Cthulhu lets you plop down things that are just absolutely scary and that your players can't fight or even really look at. In Dungeons & Dragons, when players come across a gibbering mouther or a crazy elder dragon, they are 95% of the time going to at least try to talk to it, beat it up, fight it, or kill it. And you just can't do that in Call of Cthulhu because you're just regular people. You're not superheroes. You're not Aragorn. and you have to run away and find some other way to just either escape or stop this thing from fully emerging in your world. It definitely lets you tell those stories of something bad is coming, an elder evil is being summoned or will be unleashed unless we stop it. And we have to, collect the things, kill the people, stop the ritual before it does.
Right. And it also rewards, if you're the kind of person who loves lore, if you love planting clues for your players, if you love reading off long descriptions, I am one of these people, by the way, then this is a really great system for that. It really rewards players that want to know more, that want to look into things and investigate things. It also punishes them for that, because the more they learn about this eldritch arcane lore, the worse off they'll be. But that's sort of understood to be part of the risk of being involved in the Call of Cthulhu campaign. And so if you want them to slowly uncover a nightmarish conspiracy, and if you want to, really make them, think about things and work through it and read lots of journal entries or whatever, this is a great campaign to really build a rich and atmospheric.
Right. I think building atmosphere and sort of that creeping tone, if that's something you want to do as a dungeon master, then this is the game for you. And because it's set in, our world of the 1930s or 20s or the present day, you can sort of incorporate things from the real world that can really give something a cool feel. In a recent one I ran, I incorporated a bunch of stuff from Egyptian mythology that I had known about and plopped down the Hymn of Aten for my players to parse through, and there were clues hidden in part of that. And so if that's the kind of thing that you want to put in, this is the game for you.
I love Call of Cthulhu campaigns. They're very frustrating sometimes as a player, because you are very bad at everything
right
most of the time, and that's a different way to play, and that's fun. It's frustrating if you're used to being a superhero or a hero.
It's definitely so. If I could butt in here, every time I've run one of these, and I think I've only run it 3 times at conventions. Every time I've run it for people I don't know, someone always shows up to my game basically with that in mind, that they're going to be like a superhero paranormal investigator. I'm like, okay, here's your pre-made characters. And they're like, well, I have a character if I could play it. I'm like, oh, sure, fine, whatever. This doesn't matter. And they're always like, I am Dr. Matthias Raven's Shadow, and I am a expert in the occult. I'm like, this is not that type of game. Don't do that. You'll wish you hadn't.
And this actually brings me to one of my points, and this is one of the reasons. It's not specifically a reason, but it's one reason why I haven't run this. Is that I think it's probably one of the most challenging games to run as a GM. You're responsible for so much atmosphere building and tension building and pacing. I'm generally a fan of H.P. Lovecraft's stories, if not his.
What, you're not scared of the swarthy races crawling out of the ocean and impregnating our women?
I do not believe that miscegenation is equally as terrifying as alien monsters
he's
from
a
beyond
bad
the stars.
dude.
No. Anyway, so the point what I'm trying to say here is that it's very difficult to set expectations for this game, because the I guess the cultural touchstone is a lot more unique and niche, I guess. So if you're like, hello, this is Dungeons and Dragons, you're like the Fellowship of the Ring, most people sitting at the game will say, oh yes, I can get that. But if you're like, this is the Color of Madness, or this is the Call of Cthulhu, or this is the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, people are maybe not going to have not going to be able to get into the right mindset unless they're Lovecraft nerds. And that's workable, and it's a fun challenge. I just think that it is very, like Matt said, you can get somebody who has, they want to be, Dr. Dark Shadow ass kicker, and they are proficient with a gun blade and know everything there is to know about the the eldritch beasties.
Just again derailing your thoughts, the gun blade. Okay, so shout
it.
out to the GOAT, a very kind man, R.I.P. Aaron Alston. I met him at our friendly local gaming convention, but I realized later that, so he's written for a million different games, including Hero, the Hero system, but he wrote the Starfighters of Adunar, which was one of those Star Wars expanded universe novels that are sadly no longer things. Yeah, Wraith
really?
Squadron, you remember that? Wraith Squadron? And they had gun blades in that.
Squadron.
They had
that was actually,
swords that shot laser blades. You don't remember the gun blades? Well, so after
no,
Wraith
I don't
Squadron
remember.
was one where Wedge Antilles and Good Shot Jansen, that guy, went to some world where starfighters were really cool. And they had gun blades. They would either duel with their gun blades or their starfighters.
That's amazing. There was a time when I had read every expanded universe novel, but I think by the time Wraith Squadron came out, I was no longer up on that. But that's kind of incredible.
Gunblades. Yeah, so Gunblades exist in the Star Wars Legends. They're more like blade guns, to be honest, because they're swords that shoot out a laser blast when you stab someone with them, which is, okay.
Gotcha.
But, they're gun blades. Blade guns.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway.
Sure, why not?
So
this is a universe that has snakes that turn into staffs, where
wait.
Star Wars Legends
I
is
think
full
you're
of some
thinking
wacky
of
shit.
the Book of Exodus from the from the Torah or the Bible.
I am thinking of that, but I'm also thinking of the amphistaff, which is wielded by the Yuzhan Vong to great.
Don't bring me your Yuzhan Vong shit. Every time people online start talking about, what's the next trilogy going to be? I'm like, I bet it's going to be about the Yuzhan Vong. No, it's never going to be about the Yuzhan Vong. They will never make a movie about that. They're not interested.
All right, can we get back on topic?
Okay, so what we're saying is in Call of Cthulhu,
we'll do a whole episode on...
In Call of Cthulhu, you cannot be... It works best if your players are basically average Joes with a little bit of skills. Maybe they're a fucking cop or a librarian or something like that. But and they have to confront something that is way above their pay level and mental capacity. Play it like a mystery. Give them a million clues all the time for all the things. Never be stingy with clues, and scare them. And every time they look at something new, kicks off their sanity. I won't say much about the mechanics. Call of Cthulhu 7th edition is not bad. It uses a percentile system. You can always go back with the horrible 3rd edition D20 version, or I would say, because I have done this, Call of Cthulhu is one of those games where you can read the Call of Cthulhu rulebook and basically make your players level 1 5th edition D&D characters with no classes and just a single hit die. That works pretty well. And with a different set of skills.
It's definitely easy to take the theme and function of the game.
You could GURPS
and graft
it too,
onto a different system.
Yeah.
GURPS works pretty well for...
All right, is that all we have to say about
Maybe we should have talked about GURPS.
The mysteries of the cosmos.
Yeah, it's a great... Again, so these are classics. These are games. These are systems that have been around as long, or almost, or not as long, but almost as long as D&D, and have had a deep impact on the culture and on nerd society in general. And so they're worth looking into and reading and being familiar with, just so that you can get those references and develop richer and more interesting games for yourself, no matter what you're playing.
Hey there, Cthulhu, down there in your sunken city. You're a billion light years distant, and the stars look very pretty from relay. So close and yet so far away. E-I-E-A.
Cool. All right, you got our next cool new system to try?
We've been going on for a while, but I do want to talk briefly, and I love this system, and so I think I'd like to do a longer episode on this at some point. But I just want to mention briefly before we sign off, Savage Worlds. And I love Savage Worlds because I've talked about simplicity and elegance. Oh, sorry, I thought you were like
No, I disagree, Robert. Savage Worlds sucks.
Savage Worlds is another system, and its sort of flagship property is, I would say, is its Deadlands setting, is its Western setting, but it has a fantasy setting, and it has what I think is a very cool Victorian monster hunting setting called Rippers, and it has a whole bunch of
but the rules themselves are setting agnostic.
Right. The rules are setting agnostic, which I think is what's very cool about it, is that it's so flexible and modular, and you can very easily attach it to any type of play style, and that or any type of story. But the play style is very fast,
fun,
it's very easy to understand.
It's furious.
It is fun.
That's their tagline.
It's furious.
Fast, fun, furious.
It's savage, you might say. But you roll dice based on your attributes and your skills, which go from D4 to D12, so you get a bunch of different fun dice. You can explode your die if you roll a max, right? You roll a 6, you get to keep rolling. So it's very high stakes, very fast, with potential for some very, very big numbers. And it is, it's a little bit bare bones sometimes,
but it's very simple. I would say it's quite easy to learn.
It's so simple. And I honestly think that a lot of people who play D&D would be happier with Savage Worlds because it's so fast and so fun and so easy to understand.
Could you not run a fantasy adventure dungeon crawling game with Savage Worlds? Absolutely.
You absolutely could, so easily. It would not be complicated at all. There are plenty of rules for weapons and for attacks. There's there are edges instead of feats, and it works so well for any sort of setting. It is I keep saying that it's simple, and it is, but it's not it's not completely abstracted like a
it's not like Fate or Powered by the Apocalypse or
Powered by the Apocalypse, and nothing on them, but it's definitely like a crunchy numbers game, but the dice rolling is so easy to understand, and it goes so fast, and combat is fast and furious and high stakes, and you have bennies that you can use to boost or mitigate your fluxes, and it's a great game, and some of the properties like Deadlands are very lore and theme rich, very well written and interesting. It is one of my favorite settings. I have not gotten to run nearly as many games in Savage Worlds as I would like to, but I think that it's definitely something that DMs who are looking for something different or something challenging, or especially who have players who are not so big on the crunchy parts, and definitely big on, especially if you have players that like to be flashy and like to describe, I'm gonna leap off the wall and stab my spear into the orc, or I'm gonna hurl my shield at the troll's face. If you have players that really like to do flashy fun combat stuff, Savage Worlds is the game for you. It's built into the system.
Again, back to my question, what does this system or setting let the dungeon master or the players do for the players? It lets them be flashy and creative. For the dungeon master, it lets you really get into that kind of pulp action style, though not necessarily in a pulp setting, and prepare really crazy things on the fly. It's pretty easy to roll up a monster or a challenge to overcome as the dungeon master.
Easy.
Yeah, you really it's one of those games you can prepare on note cards so quickly.
It's a fast and easy game, which lets you spend a lot more time on description and setting,
fun role playing with your players,
on role playing, and if you want to play like a Western or Indiana Jones or Sky Captain of the World Tomorrow, something, any sort of a pirate adventure, anything high adventure with lots of cool stunts and things.
Right. Oh yeah.
You want to be,
if there was Pirates of the Caribbean, the game, I would use Savage Worlds for sure.
I would as well. 100%. So if you're definitely into, high action Bruckheimer type, Michael Bay movies, anything with lots of action,
oh my god, The Rock
explosions.
should be a role playing game.
The Rock would
Green smoke.
This is a great game for modeling that.
The other thing is, I think they've been either completely open or fairly generous with, do you want to make a setting for Savage Worlds? Go ahead. So there are a million different setting books.
There's so many different settings.
Even one, I haven't played it, for East Texas University, as someone who lives vaguely in East Texas and has often worked at universities. It's a setting where you're at a small town university and things go wrong, kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer style. I haven't actually played it, but that's how many settings there are. There's like the setting for you.
That's awesome.
Every color and flavor of the rainbow.
It's so easy to make your own setting, so easy to apply the basic rules, most of which are open and available. Again, there's a lot of open source stuff related to Savage Worlds, so you can just search for it right now.
Oh, do you want to know how easy it is? Remember last episode when we talked to Michelle about having a Avatar: The Last Airbender role-playing game system? I started making one using Savage Worlds. It'll probably be ready by the time I've got a group together to play it. So
yeah, it's that easy. So definitely there's definitely no reason for you not to just go check it out. Search Savage Worlds, take a look at the core rules, and yeah, it's really fun. It's fast, high adventure, lots of swings, good and bad. It's definitely, it doesn't, I think, have quite as much of a distinct play style as structurally as Shadowrun or Call of Cthulhu does, but in terms of theme and feel, it is radically different than D&D, and it's so much faster and high stakes, and it's really fun. I love it. It's a very, very, if we like role playing and you like flashy moves, and it can be a lot of fun.
Any final thoughts on Savage Worlds?
No, I have said all I think I need to say about it.
Well, you've done 2. I've done 1. I've got one more. I was thinking of recommending the hero system as my final one because I have a lot of love for that. It's really different, and it works best as with its champion setting for making a superhero adventure game, and you can really it's a system where you can you build your character based off points and what they actually do, so it doesn't matter whether you're firing a gun or shooting energy beams out of your eyes. It mechanically works out the same. It's really complicated, and the books are pretty expensive. I do love it, but for people like our listeners who mostly play Dungeons & Dragons, my final recommendation will be a superhero game. Though come to think of it, there's a Savage World superhero version as well. But my recommendation...
Oh, I forgot to mention that, yeah.
My recommendation is Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. If you played Dungeons & Dragons, any of the editions, it's very familiar because at its core, it has that D20 system. However... unlike Dungeons & Dragons, there's no races and classes. You build your entire character out of points, which can be spent on anything, so you can make any kind of superhero that you want, and it's really easy to tell fun and quick superhero stories with lots of knockbacks and punches through walls, while still having just a little bit of mechanical crunch that you wouldn't get if you played a superhero game using Fate or something like that. Mutants and Masterminds, it's very accessible for Dungeons & Dragons veterans.
Yeah, Mutants and Masterminds is another classic and a great system. One that isn't that hard, but is sometimes seems inaccessible, and so I don't think it gets the attention that it deserves. But it's a great and fun system, and really models again that superhero experience really well. There are so many good superhero systems. Matt is a devotee of these, and rightfully so. And many of them are really, really interesting. And it's just there's not as much of an audience as there should be. I think if we get them exposed to more players.
If only people were exposed to more superheroes in their media. I feel like me reading my comic books, no one can relate to me. I'm just such a nerd that no one knows about.
It might be a topip for a different podcast.
Robert, I like superheroes. No one can understand me. No one else in this country.
No one can understand what it's like to like superheroes, I know.
Yeah, so there are a lot of superhero systems out there. And this is definitely one thing that without some heavy modifications where it's a different game that Dungeons & Dragons can't do. Lots of people want to play superheroes. Superheroes are fun. Hero systems, Mutants and Masterminds, the Marvel heroic role-playing game, Savage Worlds works fine. There are some great superhero options out there for you.
We're running long, but I don't want to cut you off if you have more.
I think that was we'll do a whole episode on maybe just superhero games and how to run them in the future. How about that?
I would love that. I would love that. There's a lot more to say. I think there's a lot of interesting, just from a DM and role playing standpoint, doing a superhero game right. So we'll do another session on that. But we're up on.
Well, I think we'll just end with saying that since you should have already seen it, just let you know that Thanos kills Liv Tyler. That was Ed Norton's girlfriend from the Hulk movie that everyone forgot about, and it was really sad. So that's a Avengers spoiler for you.
It's real
sad. I actually
sad.
haven't seen it yet, so I need to do that.
So if there's a system that we didn't talk about that you're interested in, absolutely please
give
email
us.
Let us know why you think it's interesting. We'll absolutely do this again. This was a lot of fun. I love thinking about
play new systems
and play new systems. Support the other poor starving designers who don't work for the Wizards of the Coast. Again, email us at DM of None if you have questions or thoughts. If you want to tell us how cool we are. Find us on Twitter at DM of None. And thanks for listening, and we'll hit you up next time.
Keep on rolling those dice.
This world doesn't need no opera. Here for the operation.